What up, TCK Potters? Welcome back to the program. We got another quick hitter for you tonight. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, with my man, Bobby Lamarco. We are continuing our series of 2021 fantasy football wide receiver busts. We've covered a ton of players. If you haven't caught our podcast yet, you can find that on the Believe Network, anywhere podcasts are listened to. That's the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast. Also, we have the YouTube channel right here. If you're not listening already and you're on Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter, you can find us on YouTube as well, right here at the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss anything, and leave a comment below on who you think was the biggest wide receiver bust this season. We've covered a lot of names. Tonight, we are going to hyper-target Brandon Aiyuk, one of my favorite young players. I was thrilled to have him come to my Niners out of Arizona State. I think he's a great talent, but can he prove it to Kyle Shanahan for a full season? 2 years in a row, he's been doghoused seemingly out of nowhere. When he's on the field, he's dominant. He's kind of like Deebo Samuel part 2 in that offense. He runs the ball a little bit, great after the catch. We're going to break him down. Of course, Bob is going to start with a 2021 recap. I'll get into 2022 preview. Bobby, let's get it.
Let's get after it, Skylar. So this has been fun, man. Me and you shooting off the hip 10, 15 minutes. Look at us, man. This has been a great time talking some busts this week. Make sure you check it out. This ain't going to stop. Next week, we're going to talk some steals. We're excited, guys. We're going to keep this rolling. First off, we're talking Brandon Aiyuk today. And really, Brandon Aiyuk is the tale of two seasons. It's the first 7 weeks and then weeks 8 and beyond. And we'll break those down. I kind of have some glimmer of hope for his future, but a lot of uncertainty. Trey Lance coming in potentially. Is it going to be Jimmy G staying? How good is Trey Lance going to be? We'll see. But Brandon Aiyuk, positional ADP heading into the season was 23rd. His overall ADP was 59th. His wide receiver points per game was 49th. And his overall wide receiver finish was 36th. So just back-end wide receiver 3 production for a guy that we were hoping to take as a wide receiver 2 with high wide receiver 2 upside. Now, a couple interesting facts. I did not know this. When I was going into this, I wanted to look at his red zone usage, and I found out he led the team in end zone targets. That's kind of surprising. Eked out George Kittle. Of course, he played a couple more games than Kittle, but Deebo played a big-time role in the ground game in the red zone. So I think that led to Brandon Aiyuk seeing a little more opportunities, but he did see 10. That's a 9. That was good for tied for 19th in the NFL. I thought that was interesting. But overall, when it comes to his overall outlook too, but red zone opportunities for this offense, when I'm looking at Brandon Aiyuk and his potential for 2022, when I recap his 2021, he is going to be 4th on the team in red zone opportunities. It goes Deebo with 32 this season. Then it was Elijah Mitchell with 23, Kittle with 20, and Aiyuk with 18. So it's still reasonable, but that's important to remember in the back of our minds. This offense is going to have a lot of mouths to feed. And what happens if they start using Trey Lance's legs in the red zone if he is the quarterback? Is that going to impact his upside? So that is notable as well. But not to bury the lead, let's talk a little bit about his 2 seasons. Weeks 1 through 7, the first 6 games of the season for the 49ers, he was only playing 66% of the snaps, averaging 2.7 targets per game and 3.4 points per game. I think everybody's hair was on fire for a guy they were taking in the 5th and 6th round. Then week 8, all of a sudden the doghouse door opens. He comes running out week 8. Weeks 8 through 18, 11 games. He played 92% of the snaps, 6.2 targets, 11 points per game. That 11 points per game would have been wide receiver 32. Now, granted, not great, but it's a big time improvement from his overall points per game 49th finish, jumps all the way down to 32nd, but still not exactly what we thought Brandon Aiyuk would be, but still much better the second half of the year. In those 11 games, in those 11 contests, he didn't have any elite games. So elite games in this scenario is 18 points per game, but he did have 4 wide receiver 1 finishes. That was 13 points per game or more in half-point PPR. But really, we saw his high floor. So he had 7 games of 10 double-digit fantasy point games, 7 of his 11 games over that second half stretch. So that would have been good for that percentage. Would have been good for 11. So we started seeing the high floor because of the additional work he was getting. So there is optimism for his 2022. But Sky, give us your thoughts as a 49ers fan and as our leading analyst for futuristic predictions for 2022. Give us your shout out. What do you think?
Well, again, I am a 49er fan, but I try to keep my homer takes to a minimum. I think people have got that over the podcast over the years. So really, I mean, I was very stoked on Brandon Aiyuk coming into 2021, and I listed all this last year, but I'll just recap again real quick, Bob, like why I was so hyped on him. You and I and the boys broke down every division, and we had a stud, a dud, a breakout, a sleeper, and a deep sleeper for each division, and we picked a player within that division each and kind of broke it down. My breakout in all of the NFC West, which has a ton of high quality talent, obviously with the Seahawks, Chargers, or Seahawks, Cardinals, and Rams, and the 49ers, my breakout was going to be Brandon Aiyuk. So in 2020, coming into 2021, he led all wide receivers as a rookie with 8 targets per game. He led all 49ers in targets with 96. Now, of course, that year, Debo had gone down for a while, but he was also wide receiver 3 in points per game over weeks 7 through 15 behind only Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams in 2020. So the back half of the season, Brandon Aiyuk was wide receiver 3 in PPR fantasy points per game. His 12.4 yards per reception were similar to Adam Thielen, Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs. A couple of those guys are on this year's bust list, but if you remember, they're a bust because they were drafted so high because they dominated in 2020. This is what I'm going off of now. So that was kind of the reason I and other people were so hyped on Brandon Aiyuk coming in as a breakout candidate. Second year of Kyle Shanahan for him, first round draft capital. Debo coming back healthy, another year of Jimmy Garoppolo, better run scheme, yada, yada. Well, unfortunately, as Bob alluded to, that didn't happen. Now, if you're looking at, his game log, which Bob broke down already, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. If you look at like the individual matchups with some of these like great cornerbacks, I'm actually going to jump all the way to the playoff game when he played the Dallas Cowboys and went against Trevon Diggs, who could have been the defensive player of the year, led the NFL in interceptions, absolutely phenomenal. He only ran 22 routes that game, but he had 6 targets, 5 catches in that game. And he dusted Trevon Diggs on one particular pass. Jimmy Garoppolo overthrew him. I almost threw my body out the window when that happened because I thought the Niners were going to lose that game because of that throw, but he toasted Trevon Diggs. He was eliminated from the Packers game. Pretty much Eric Stokes took him out 20 routes, just 1 target, no catches, but came back against Darius Williams for the 3rd time against the Rams, 26 routes, 8 targets, 4 catches. If you eliminate that game against Eric Stokes and the Green Bay Packers, Brandon Aiyuk, after their bye week, had a great target share percentage. 7, 8, 4, 7, 7, 6, 11, just 2 against AJ Terrell in Atlanta, but they were dominating that game. 5, 6, 7, 6, and 8 down the stretch. So Kyle Shanahan did put him in the doghouse. He didn't play really at all. He had 12 routes opening day against the Detroit Lions in what turned out to be a shootout, but no targets in that game for some reason. Everyone's pulling their hair out, as you mentioned, came back after the fact he was doing okay. So I think he's going to be fine moving forward, but for some reason, Shanahan and Brandon Aiyuk have this thing going on that's very serious. And in fantasy, you need that opportunity. And we see these doghouse guys every once in a while. And like, Mike Tomlin and Chase Claypool have a thing. Like, that's a problem. So if Aiyuk can stay clean, I think he'll be just fine. Moving into 2022, I think he's going to be great. This is the 3rd year really with Kyle Shanahan. It's going to be with Trey Lance. Jimmy's going to leave. You're going to have Debo Samuel, who's carved in his role, but he has his own thing. They're not competing for targets like most receivers do because it's a totally different offense. And then George Kittle, of course, has his own route over the middle. But as Bob mentioned, very important, Aiyuk led the 49ers in red zone targets. He had 10 red zone targets, converted 5 of those into touchdowns. 50% conversion rate in the red zone is absolutely fantastic. So I'm still all in on Brandon Aiyuk. I expect a big 2022 from him. I think a 3rd year breakout for him is definitely possible. And let's just hope Trey Lance is worth the hype. I think he will be. And with that, I think that Brandon Aiyuk is putting in extra work, which he sowed down the second half last year. And I think he can come out the gate this year instead of being slow like he has been the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Brandon Aiyuk's 2022 is his ADP did slip, 83rd overall, wide receiver 35. And the Houston game with Trey Lance was nice, right? He had 4 for 94 And that's when he really was getting all the work on the field. They did show a little glimpse there against Houston. But what worries me about Aiyuk is that the Shanahan offense isn't a high volume offense for passing games. And Trey Lance, listen, Trey Lance could be like the biggest time, it could be like a Josh Allen trajectory. Great guy with his legs, big arm, does all this. This offense explodes. That could happen. It's in the ranges. But another range is that he runs the ball more. I mean, at least with Jimmy, he ain't scrambling. So they're going to be throwing the ball when he gets it. So this is a very run-heavy team. And George Kittle was playing pretty much all year kind of on a bum wheel. Like, he didn't look the same. And if Kittle comes back next year healthy, could demand more targets as well. So I just Debo was just something else this year, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I like about Ayuk, though, with the Debo situation is that Debo got so much work in the ground game that it actually looked like it opened up opportunities for Ayuk, because now you're not dropping back to throw it to Debo, then Kittle, then Ayuk. It's really, hey, we got Debo's touches. Now we could throw it to Ayuk. We could throw it to Kittle. So there is some general thoughts there that it could be a good bounce back for him next year. But what are your thoughts? Let's quickly talk about Trey Lance. Do you think Trey Lance is the guy next year? What are your thoughts about him overall?
100% the guy. I mean, no matter what, first of all, Jimmy Garoppolo is definitely going to get traded. Secondly, he has off-season shoulder surgery. So even if Kyle tries to get cute and brings back Jimmy, he's going to be the backup because he's not going to be ready. Trey Lance wasn't able to steal the job from Jimmy Garoppolo per se, but he also started a game, came in halfway through another game. He's still a rookie. If this kid had 4 or 5 games to figure it out, I think he would have been just fine. I'm excited for him. I mean, we gave up a hell of a lot for him, so it better pan out.
Yeah.
3 first-round picks and then some. But I don't see any chance. I mean, I've been putting tweets out this last couple of weeks. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like, at Sky Guasco, SkyGuasco on Twitter. One of them is basically just like a lot of these rumors, off-season rumors, and we're going to talk about all this shit as we get going here, but so many of them are garbage, and I'm getting much better every year that we do this of reading right through them. And not that I'm like Nostradamus or anything, but like Kyler Murray didn't believe it for 1 second. Jimmy Garoppolo staying with the 49ers didn't believe it for 1 second. So many of these are articles to be written by people. I don't see it a possibility to happen. Made a claim that Rodgers would probably make it back to Green Bay. Sure enough, that seems to be the story nowadays. So anyway, I do think Trey Lance is the guy. I think he's going to be just fine. It might take him a week or two. I think it's less about Trey Lance, dude, and it's still the Rams defense. The Cardinals defense is much better. The Seahawks have to get better than they have been. So it's all going to be about the health of Deebo Samuel, the health of George Kittle, the health of Brandon Aiyuk, and the run game to see if Trey Lance can be successful. I think my Niners are going to be just fine. Should be at least in the playoff run. They surprised everybody this year, of course, and they were a play away from getting to the Super Bowl. So I think they're going to be just fine. I will say, Bob, before I turn it over to you to get us out of here, I'm going to give a quick player comp, and I'll make this one snappy. I don't even know that it's fair to make a player comp because maybe Brandon Aiyuk should go the other direction, but I'm thinking of a second-year player this year coming into year 2 who has the hype maybe that Brandon Aiyuk had, and I'm going to take a look at like Jalen Waddle / Devontae Smith. Either one of those guys, I think, has the talent if they get the work and they get the touchdowns to be the number one guy, to be the leader on their team in all the categories. And if they get the quarterback play, both of those guys have the opportunity to be drafted in maybe like the middle rounds, maybe not Waddle because he's blowing up, draft boards now, but Smith kind of coming under the radar a little bit and exploding in the second half, maybe as a, back end wide receiver 1 when it's all said and done. Smith had 900 yards pretty quietly last year, and Waddle broke all sorts of rookie records. So I like both of those guys coming into year 2.
All right, man. Well, that's it, guys. That's Brandon Aiyuk. Basically, this segment was our final segment for the wide receiver bust this week. How to avoid drafting a bust in your fantasy football drafts. If you want to listen to our full podcast that we did yesterday, we actually broke down the common themes, and I think that's very useful for us projecting players heading into 2022. Once again, I'm Bobby Lamarco. This is the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast on the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel. All our episodes are brought to you by Believe Networks and BetOnline AG. That's Sky Guasco. Once again, we are out of here.